Hey everyone, welcome back to the channel. Today I've got a really exciting project lined up that's perfect for you DIY enthusiasts, leather workers, and jewelry makers. If you're like me, you know that having the right tool makes all the difference in your craft, and sometimes the best tools are the ones that you create your own. I've been wanting to create a rawhide mallet for quite some time, something that's sturdy enough for the leather work, yet delicate enough for the delicate metals. But instead of dropping a ton of money on one, I thought, why not make my own? Plus, you know I love making my own tools. So here's the plan. I'm going to use this rawhide dog bone that I purchased at the dollar store. Yep, you heard that right. I paid $3 for this unassuming rawhide dog bone. And we're going to turn it into a custom rawhide hammer. We're going to secure everything with epoxy resin to create a tool that's not only functional, but also uniquely mine. So whether you're looking to save some cash or love the idea of making your own tools or just enjoy a good DIY challenge, this project's for you. So let's roll up our sleeves, get creative, and transform this humble dog bone into a one-of-a-kind mallet that is a game changer for your leather and jewelry work. That's next. Okay, so for the first step is we need to get this thing pliable. It's rock hard. So what I'm going to do is we're going to throw this into a tub of water and let it sit overnight, maybe a day or longer, until it hopefully comes apart. Then we're going to actually flatten out the rawhide and we will let it dry a bit. Then we'll start rolling it up, cutting it into strips, then rolling it up. For the mallet handle, I've had these 4 side table legs sitting around in my basement for ages. They're hardwood. It's from a side table. It's like a 70s style. You know what 70s style was that my parents used to have. I kept the legs for some reason, thought I would use them. I never did. However, it's a nice hardwood. I think it's oak. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to, if I had a lathe, I'd use a lathe. I don't have a lathe. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut off approximately that much, and then I'm going to sand it down, maybe use a rasp, maybe use a wood file, maybe use my disc sander, and we'll kind of form it into shape. I'll do that off camera. You don't need to see that, but it's the next morning and the bone has softened significantly, although it does need a little bit more time. In the meantime, what I've done is I've created a little mini hammer. I used vegetan leather, just a piece of leather, scrap leather. I rolled it up and I used a polyurethane glue. I used Gorilla Glue as the adhesive. The problem with that was as the glue dries, it tends to expand. So it left some gaps in between the layers of the hammerhead. So what I did is I mixed up some epoxy and I kind of poured it down the sides. What I'm going to do is I'll just use the bandsaw and I'll cut off the edges and then I'll do some sanding. The reason that rawhide is chosen over leather for these mallets is because rawhide is tougher and more durable than leather. Also, it absorbs and distributes the force of the impact better than leather would. So hence rawhide. Plus it's cheaper than the leather. I just wanted to test the leather just to see, proof of concept. Also, what I've done is I've taken this wooden leg, I believe it's oak, I formed it into a hammerhead. I also cut off the end cap here and I used the metal just as a decoration. What I also did is I took this 5/8 tube that I just had it laying around. I don't know where I got it from. I just tend to keep some materials when I see it instead of throwing it out. I took some floor matting and I cut it out. I used contact cement and I glued it on. Then I took some hockey tape and I rolled it up. So I also have this as a handle for the mallet. I have 2 handles. I'm going to go with this one. Obviously, it looks a lot nicer. I may attach this handle to this head. I drilled a 5/8 hole in here. It does fit. Looks funny. But we'll test it out. I'll cut off the sides. I'll use some epoxy to glue that in. We'll see how good that holds. I don't know. I want to see how the leather holds up to some impacts. So that's where we're at. We will let the bone continue to soak in water to soften up. And we'll come back when that's done. I took this small little leather proof of concept that I had made out of veg tan leather. I cut off the ends and I attached a handle. Then I took it out to the curb and I did a number on it. You can tell that it's compressed here. However, it held up really well. This is the end cut off where I didn't hit it. I'm actually quite happy with it. It's firm, yet there is a little bit of give to it. What I'm thinking about doing is maybe curving or sanding off the edges, rounding it a bit, just to get rid of the sharp corners. I'll show you how I clamp it up when we get to the rawhide mallet, which is the purpose of this video in the first place, but I just want to show you that this other little mallet that I made here it's nice. I'll be using it. It's small, compact. It gives quite a whack. Rawhide still soaking. Just trying to bide the time. So the video is not perfectly straight. Apologies for that. Here is the rawhide. It's decomposing a bit. It is wet. There were smaller pieces inside. Like this is just ugh. There were smaller pieces inside. They were just scraps. I threw those out. They were decomposing. Rawhide and leather are basically the same thing, except the leather has been tanned and the hide has been turned into leather, whereas this has not gone through a tanning process. One of the reasons we tan the hides is to prevent decomposition and the growth of any bacteria or fungi. And this, who knows whether bacteria or fungi will form. I did give it a wash just because after I took it out of the water. But apparently, as this dries out, it becomes hard and prevents the growth of bacteria and fungi. So I don't believe it. I wanted to make this 4 inches by 2 inches. I'll get to 2 inches for sure. It's fairly thick. We got what, maybe 2 millimeters? And we got 4 inches here. So if I wrap it from there to here, but I need to flatten it. And I'm thinking I need to get it stretched somehow. And this needs to dry. And I just don't want to leave it on my workbench. I won't be able to get on the workbench for a while. But I do need to flatten it like that. So I'm going to get a board. Okay, this is what I'm going to do. Let's get this over here. I just don't trust it. I want to get this dried. I'm going to get a nice piece of pine. I don't know, 3/4 inch, 12 inches wide. I'm going to get some parchment paper, lay it on it. Get this on. Don't care if it gets dirty, tell you the truth. Try to leave it flat here. I'll put another layer of parchment on it. Lay a piece of wood on it, add some weight, and leave it to dry for a few days. Need some more weight. This is narrow anyway. Let's give it a few days and see how it turns out. So after I left the rawhide underneath the weights to flatten and dry, I thought to myself, rawhide stiffens and hardens when it dries. So if I'm flattening it and letting it dry that way, how am I going to roll it up? I'm smart. It's been about 14, 15 hours. I took it off the weights. I had 160 pounds of weights on top of it, or 72 kilos. So it wasn't going to dry anyway. There wasn't enough air around it for it to dry properly. So here, I took the weights off. Been about 14 hours, and it is still pliable, so it's good. And this is just the dirt from, I was using dirty cloth, so it doesn't matter. So what I'm going to do is, this is hopefully 4 inches. Yeah, just over 4 inches. So I'm going to cut a 4-inch strip, roll it up, clamp it up, and then let it dry for a few days. Doesn't want to cooperate here. We're going to roll it up. We're going to let it dry. And then how am I going to glue it together? What I'm thinking is, once it dries substantially, you can't use the epoxy resin on a wet or a damp surface. So let it dry. It'll harden. But when I loosen the clamps, it should kind of open up a little bit, and then maybe I'll kind of just soak it in the epoxy resin, or just kind of pour it into the seams and then clamp it up again. That's what I'm thinking, or that's what my plan is. So I'll try to do this tight. I'm not going to use any, I could use polyurethane. I could use the Gorilla Glue, because you need a wet surface for that. But I don't know. I'm hoping I get 2 inches. Maybe I don't. I don't even have 2 inches. I got 1.5 inches. So maybe this is going to be a 1.5 inch mallet. By 3 inches. It's 1.5 by 3 inches. It looks like it's going to be just fine. Let's try to do it tighter. Could start it off with this. You know what? Let's just make it approximately 1.5 by 3. But let's start it off with this end. Let us. Why don't we add some weight, add some substance to it, right? What if we do that? To there. Just look, it looks like it's going to be about 3 inches. It's going to be 3 by 1.5. So how are we going to clamp this? I'm going to use some, this is just a piece of styrene. It's from an old sign. It's thin. It's 1.09 millimeters in thickness. So I'm going to wrap it in this, because it is pliable. So we'll wrap this in the plastic, like so. If you have a thin piece of sheet metal, use sheet metal. I've got these, I guess these are hose clamps. And what I'm going to do, ow. Now we'll let this dry for a few days. And when we come back, I don't know. We'll see what we have. Set it aside. It's been drying 4 or 5 days, so let's take it apart, see what we have here. Still a little bit damp, actually. So what I'm going to do, but it looks like it's holding its shape. I did some reading up, and traditional way of making these rawhide hammers was there was no adhesive at all. You just let it dry like this. This has been sitting in this container by the window for a few weeks now, and I'll be honest, I totally forgot about it. The downside is it's really stiff. And I don't think I'm going to be able to get the resin covered properly. The upside is it's nice and dry. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to mix the resin in this little container. I'm going to pour it inside it. You need some gloves. I'll pour it into the cavity or inside the layers, and I'll use this, on those pliers, to try to wrap it like so. Or that's the plan. And once it's wrapped, I'm going to take this parchment paper that I have. I smeared some beeswax on it. So my thinking is the beeswax will prevent the epoxy resin from sticking to it. So I think. Who knows if it is or not. After the parchment's on, I'll take this plastic wrap that I had used originally, get the clamps on it, and let it dry for a few weeks. I mean, for a few days. So, first step, let's create the resin. Now this stuff is, or let's mix the epoxy resin. Now this stuff is very old and it's dried up, or it's drying up. I can't even open it. It's very thick. So I found that if I heat it up, I discovered that if you heat it up, it's like honey. When you heat up the honey, the viscosity is lowered, so it becomes less viscous and it flows. So I'm going to put a little bit. This is going to be very messy. So, oh, this is really getting really old. It's like candy. Don't mix it for candy. So what I'm going to do is heat this now. That's much better. Okay. Let's pour the other portion. Oh, shoot, too much. You didn't tell me that's not as viscous. Need some more of this. Wow. I don't know, maybe this much more. Let's hope. Let's see. I'm going to open it up a bit. And I get resin all over my hands. Just fine. Let's open it up. Pour it in from the other side. You want to get nicely soaked. Yeah, this is not the way to do it. This is not how they make hammers. self-leveling, so it should even out eventually. Now you have that. Oh, it's a shame that I'm going to get this all dirty. Okay. I'll take this and wrap it. It's not bad, actually. It's not half bad, is it? Okay, so we're going to take this. How do I get this off? Get the gloves off. I'll wrap it. Okay. Now we take this. We wrap it here. Then we take this. So we'll let this sit a couple days. We'll come back, and I think when we come back, we can finish it off. So we'll be back. So the handle's stained, and I've given it one coat of polyurethane. And this has been 24 hours, so let's open it up and see what it looks like. Oh, nice. The wax did its job. So not bad, right? I just got a V into the piece of, 2 pieces of 1/4-inch plywood that I had laying around. So I'm going to lay it in there. This will give me a straight cut. And then when I'm drilling a hole for the handle, it'll allow me to go straight in. That wasn't the easiest. Actually, it's good. That's not rounded there. So there you have it. Proof of concept leather vegetan hammer. Rawhide $3 dog chewing bone rawhide hammer. Both will be a welcome addition to my hammer collection. Thanks for joining, guys. Until next time, stay safe.